A royal shockwave has just hit Buckingham Palace. Queen Camilla reportedly left in tears after Prince Harry discovered and read a sealed letter from Princess Diana, written decades ago and kept hidden until now. The letter, a raw and emotional warning addressed to her sons, directly names Camilla. Sources say Harry was stunned, William was speechless, and Camilla was devastated. She pleaded to see the letter but was refused. Now the royal family is shaken, secrets are unraveling, and the Queen Consort's future hangs in the balance. What exactly did Diana write? Why reveal it now? And is this the beginning of the end? But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now let's get back to the main content. It all began on what seemed like a normal day in Montecito. Prince Harry, who has distanced himself from royal life, received a carefully wrapped package with no return address or sender. Inside was a velvet-lined box containing a letter, its edges yellowed with age, sealed with Princess Diana's personal crest. He stared at it in disbelief. Could this really be her handwriting? With trembling hands, he opened it. The first words nearly took his breath away. My dearest boys, if you are reading this, then what I feared has come true. This was no loving note. It was a warning, and one name was mentioned repeatedly, Camilla. Harry read it over 3 times, barely able to breathe. Diana's tone was sharp and direct. She described feeling pushed aside, lied to, and emotionally isolated. She accused Camilla of weaving her way into Charles's heart long before the public was aware. Diana believed Camilla held a quiet but powerful influence over the royal household, with motives far more strategic than anyone had realized. But the last line hit Harry the hardest. Protect each other. Trust what you see, not what they tell you. He sat back, stunned. This letter wasn't just words. It was his mother's buried truth, suddenly alive again, heavy with meaning. Harry knew he couldn't keep this secret. There was only one other person who needed to hear it, his brother. But how would William respond? Would this bring them closer or finally drive them apart? The next chapter holds the answer. Diana's hidden message about Camilla was clear and unfiltered. She didn't hold back her feelings about the marriage or about Camilla. She painted Camilla not just as the other woman, but as someone quietly pulling strings behind the scenes of royal power. She is not your enemy, but she is not your ally either, Diana warned. Diana detailed how her marriage to Charles slowly unraveled, not through loud arguments or tabloid scandals, but through cold silences, fading affection, and the constant presence of a third person, even when unseen. She claimed that Camilla had been quietly influencing Charles long before their divorce was finalized. According to Diana, Camilla's reach extended beyond palace walls, affecting decisions, public statements, and even the royal staff. In another part of the letter, Diana reflected on the media's twisted narrative. They painted me as emotional, but never asked why. They called her dignified, but never saw what was really happening behind closed doors. Her tone wasn't bitter. It was heartbreak. A mother writing out of fear, not revenge, desperate to warn her sons. She urged them to question what they were told and to remember the real her. The message was clear. Diana saw Camilla not just as a romantic rival, but as a growing power within the royal system. Someone she couldn't stop but hoped her sons would someday understand. The truth was now impossible to ignore. Harry knew he had to share this with William, not just for closure, but for clarity. Could this finally bring them together, or would it drive them further apart? After years of silence, the moment for a life-changing conversation had arrived. When the brothers met at a secluded countryside estate, away from the press, cameras, and royal watchers, there were no titles or staff, just 2 brothers and 1 letter. Harry handed the letter over without a word. William looked puzzled at first, then recognized the handwriting. He froze, silent, for nearly 10 minutes, flipping through the pages. The heavy silence between them was suffocating. Finally, William whispered, "I wasn't ready for this." His expression shifted, shock, sadness, and something deeper, regret. He remembered the pain Diana wrote about, the loneliness he had buried deep inside, now brought back by the letter. What followed wasn't anger, but a reckoning. They talked for hours, crying, arguing, but ultimately reconnecting. They were no longer just heir and spare. They were brothers bound by grief and truth. "She wrote this for us, not to divide us, but to wake us up," Harry said. William nodded in agreement, but the bigger question remained. What should they do now? Keep the letter secret, or let the truth come out? Before they could decide, someone else found out. A loyal royal aide overheard parts of their conversation, and soon the news reached someone who was never meant to see the letter, Queen Camilla. Her reaction was nothing anyone expected. Camilla was alone in her private chambers when a senior aide entered, face pale and hesitant. "There's something you need to know," he said. What came next left her speechless. The letter everyone thought didn't exist had been found, and it named her. For a long moment, Camilla said nothing. Then she asked one simple question. "Can I see it?" The aide hesitated. "It's with Prince William, and he's not ready to share it. At least, not yet." That was the breaking point. Camilla, who had always maintained her composure, stood up, walked to the window, and suddenly broke down in tears. She had faced countless storms over the years, but this wasn't just another scandal. It was Diana's voice from the past crashing down like a tidal wave. "This was never meant to resurface," she reportedly whispered. By that evening, Camilla quietly left the palace. No press, no security escort, just her and a driver. She headed straight to Ray Mill House, her private refuge. Sources say she remained silent throughout the journey. The woman who had fought hard to win public respect now found herself caught in a storm she never anticipated. The royal household scrambled to contain the damage, but one thing was clear. This wasn't going away anytime soon. Amid the chaos, something unexpected unfolded. The letter, meant to divide, began to bring healing. While Camilla withdrew, the brothers found a shared connection through their grief. The letter that reopened old wounds became the catalyst for mending them. What happened next was a reunion no one expected. As the sun set, Harry and William sat together on the bench their mother once cherished in Kensington Gardens. No media, no palace aides, just two brothers, two broken hearts, and a heavy truth between them. They sat in silence at first. The quiet said it all. Finally, William broke it. "Do you think she knew this would bring us back together?" he asked softly. Harry nodded. "She always meant everything she did." The letter had shaken the palace, but strangely, it rekindled something thought lost. Brotherhood. For the first time in years, they weren't arguing over tabloids, spouses, or royal roles. They were simply remembering Diana. They laughed over her quirks, the way she danced to 80s pop songs, how she used to sneak them out for fast food, and then they cried openly. "I forgot what her voice sounded like," William admitted. This letter had brought it back. They stayed long after dark. The cold didn't matter. That raw, honest moment was one of the most powerful royal reunions in decades. Those close to the brothers say everything changed that night. Old resentments began to fade. Their mother's words gave them a reason to reconnect, not as rivals, but as family. But while the brothers found some peace in their shared past, another storm was brewing. At the center stood King Charles, facing a choice no father or monarch should ever have to make. Protect the woman he loves, or finally confront the ghost of the woman he lost. Here's what happened next. When King Charles was informed, those nearby noticed an immediate shift. He didn't raise his voice or demand details. Instead, he slowly sat down, as if the weight of history had finally caught up with him. "She wrote it?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty. It includes details about Camilla," came the reply. That night, Charles held the letter, not physically but in his mind. He didn't ask to see the letter, maybe because deep down he already knew what it contained. He had lived through it. He had played a part in it. Behind closed doors, Charles met with both his sons. No cameras, no royal court. Just a family fractured and raw. "I know I've made mistakes," Charles reportedly said, his voice trembling, "but I never stopped loving your mother, in my own way." William remained calm and composed, while Harry looked down, quiet. There was no shouting or arguing, just painful honesty. Charles was torn. As king, he felt obligated to protect the dignity of his wife, Queen Camilla, but as a father, he couldn't ignore the anguish Diana poured into that letter. He was stuck between the woman he married and the woman he lost forever. That evening, Charles canceled all public engagements. Palace insiders say he needed time to manage the optics, but whispers hinted at something deeper. He was shaken not only as a monarch, but as a man. Still, the palace couldn't keep such a secret for long. Within 48 hours, whispers exploded into headlines around the globe. Diana's name was backsplashed across every major paper. Camilla's reputation was under intense scrutiny, and the internet went wild. The monarchy's private pain had just become public spectacle. What came next was a media storm like no other. In less than 2 days, what started as a quiet family discovery turned into a global media frenzy. Leading news outlets in London, New York, Sydney, and Paris all ran the same headline. Diana warned her sons about Camilla. Letter revealed. Royal commentators were stunned. The timing, the tone, the explosive content, it was a bombshell. "This isn't just a letter," one royal analyst declared on live TV. "It's a reckoning, a voice from beyond the grave shaking the very foundations of the monarchy." Social media erupted. Hashtags like #Diana's letter, #Camilla exposed, and #Royal reckoning trended worldwide. TikTok creators dissected every line. YouTubers theorized about Diana's intentions. The whole world was watching. Some sympathized with Camilla, arguing she had already paid her dues and didn't deserve to be dragged back into this. But many sided with Diana. "We were told to move on," one Twitter user wrote. But this letter proves we were never told the full truth. News anchors replayed old interviews. Podcasts analyzed the royal timeline in detail for the first time in years. The British press, often criticized for being too close to the palace, began asking tough questions. Could this shake the monarchy to its core? Should it? As the world debated, Camilla's silence grew louder. She issued no statements. She skipped public appearances. She disappeared. The spotlight shifted to her empty seat. Where was the Queen Consort? What was she feeling? The response was heartbreaking, revealing a side of Camilla rarely seen by the public. She canceled every scheduled engagement for 2 weeks. No charity events, no official visits. Her calendar wiped clean. Royal photographers were informed she wouldn't be appearing. The gates at Ray Mill House were firmly shut. For the first time in years, Camilla Parker Bowles wasn't acting as Queen Consort. She was just Camilla, isolated with her past. Palace insiders shared she was emotionally drained, even breaking down in tears during meetings. She reportedly said, "I thought we had moved past this. I believed I had earned my peace." But the world wasn't ready to let go. The letter reignited old wounds, especially among younger generations who hadn't lived through the original scandal but were now taking sides, many standing firmly with Diana. Polls taken within 72 hours showed a sharp drop in Camilla's approval ratings. Hashtags like #Diana's voice and #ShutMyQueen flooded Instagram and Twitter. One Gen Z activist wrote, "This isn't about revenge, it's about truth, about how women like Diana were silenced and their stories buried." Supporters urged Camilla to break her silence and defend herself, but she stayed quiet. Her last words to a friend were reportedly, "You can't fight a ghost." As Camilla remained hidden, the pressure shifted toward the throne. Could Charles withstand this storm without damaging his legacy? Could the monarchy survive another wave of public outrage? And what about the future generation of royals? What followed wasn't just a question of reputation, it was a matter of survival. The monarchy stood at a critical crossroads. Camilla withdrew completely from public view. The once prominent Queen Consort disappeared for days. The media searched for her everywhere, but she was nowhere to be found. No red carpet appearances, no hospital visits, no royal balcony waves. She had retreated to Ray Mill House in Wiltshire, her private refuge where palace protocols held no sway. Staff described her as unreachable, not just physically, but emotionally. "She's not angry," one aide revealed. "She's broken-hearted. She thought time had healed these wounds." The curtains at Ray Mill remained drawn. Camilla didn't even turn on the TV, but the headlines found their way to her, through whispers, texts from close friends, and a silence that spoke volumes. She wasn't just facing public backlash, she was battling a private storm. Her carefully crafted image, built on charity and quiet dedication, was unraveling. Decades of effort questioned overnight. "I can't change what happened," she reportedly told a close confidant, "but I never imagined it would haunt me like this." Those around her urged her to speak out, to tell her side of the story. But Camilla didn't want a press statement. She didn't want to spin the narrative. She wanted silence. In royal circles, silence can be a kind of power. But in this case, it felt like surrender. As Camilla grieved behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace grew quieter. The press weren't the only ones asking questions. Inside the family, whispered conversations turned into urgent meetings. Could this controversy affect the line of succession? Was public trust slipping away? The next moves were no longer just political. They were deeply personal. And the man wearing the crown now faced a choice no king ever wants to make. The monarchy stood at a crossroads. Inside the palace, tension was high. The Queen Consort had retreated into seclusion. The princes weren't fully aligned with palace officials. King Charles found himself confronting the toughest moment of his reign yet. Advisors were split. Some urged, "Ride out the storm." Others warned, "If this spirals, it could seriously harm the monarchy's future." At the center of every discussion was one question. How much longer can we avoid addressing succession? It wasn't about pushing Charles aside, but about managing appearances. The public was watching every move, every word, every delay was scrutinized. If Camilla kept avoiding public duties and Diana's legacy continued to grow louder, Charles might be forced to quietly rethink Camilla's place in the monarchy. The younger royals, especially William and Kate, remained far more popular. Their approval ratings were solid. With Harry's renewed emotional connection to Diana now in the spotlight, the question resurfaced. Is it time for the next generation to step up? But don't get it wrong. Charles wasn't ready to step down. Not yet. Still, behind palace doors, the atmosphere had shifted. No more whispers. Real conversations. Real stakes. "The crown is safe," one aide admitted, "but the faces wearing it may change." Amid all this tension and tradition, something surprising began to happen. A spark, a movement, a voice. Young people worldwide started revisiting the legacy of the woman who started it all, Diana. Thanks to TikTok, documentaries, and social media, her story came alive again. The letter hadn't just rattled the royals, it had inspired a whole generation. 25 years after her tragic death, Princess Diana's voice was louder than ever. The letter ignited a flame. Suddenly, young people who weren't even born when Diana died flooded the internet with tributes, quotes, and heartfelt emotions. Her interviews went viral. Her speeches became TikTok soundtracks. Documentaries streamed by the millions. She was ahead of her time, said one viral creator. Vulnerable, fierce, real. Classrooms debated her impact. Biographies shot back up bestseller lists. And young girls asked their moms, was Diana really like that? The answer? Yes, and even more. For a generation often skeptical of institutions, Diana represented something genuine, a person who spoke honestly, defied rules for love, and paid the price. She wasn't perfect, a college student said on a podcast, but she was human. That's why we trust her. The hashtag #Diana's Voice spread across the globe. Netflix rushed a special into production. ABC announced a docuseries promising to explore the letter, the love, and the legacy. Diana wasn't just remembered, she was being rediscovered. And with that rediscovery came a surge of support for Diana's sons, especially Harry. Just when many thought Harry would stay silent forever, he stepped onto a stage, unexpected, raw, and unfiltered. Cameras were rolling, the world was watching, and his words went beyond a tribute to his mother. They were a direct message to the monarchy. A storm was coming, and Harry was no longer holding back. The occasion was a veterans' charity gala. Nothing royal, nothing political, just Harry being himself. But that night, everything shifted. He approached the microphone, visibly tense and holding back tears. The room fell silent, sensing something significant was about to be said. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," he began, his voice trembling, "but some truths are too loud to ignore." Without naming names, Harry spoke from the heart. He honored his mother and thanked veterans for their bravery. Then he grew more personal. "Sometimes the truth doesn't come in press releases or public smiles," he said. "Sometimes it comes from a place of pain, from a voice that never got to finish her story." He never directly mentioned the letter or launched any attacks, but everyone understood what he meant. This wasn't just about veterans, it was about legacy, healing, and history. At one point he looked up and said, "To anyone who's ever felt unheard, unseen, or pushed aside, you're not alone." Tears filled his eyes. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras captured it all, and by morning, Harry's speech was everywhere in the headlines. For many, this was the moment Diana's message finally pierced through the noise. But with every revelation, the rift within the royal family only deepened. Camilla stayed hidden. Charles remained conflicted. William tried to balance loyalty with truth. And Harry, he had finally spoken. Now, with the nation watching and the monarchy under pressure, only one question remained. Would this letter change history or shatter it? Here's how the story continued. Though the palace gates stayed firmly closed, everything inside was shifting. King Charles was walking a political tightrope. Publicly, he maintained his composure. Privately, insiders say he was drained, caught between senior advisors and family members, urging him to confront the crisis head-on. But how? If he sided with Camilla, he risked alienating his sons. If he acknowledged Diana's letter, what would that mean for Camilla's future? Meanwhile, William returned to royal duties, but with a noticeably changed attitude, more serious and less rehearsed. Reports said he was in daily contact with Harry, something that hadn't happened in years. Whether that connection would last was uncertain. Camilla remained silent and absent, reportedly deeply shaken. The nation grew divided. Older generations defended the monarchy. Younger ones demanded change. Polls showed trust in the institution slipping, especially among those under 40. And through it all, one ghost lingered. Diana, not in body, but in influence, memory, and voice. "Will this letter change the monarchy forever?" one BBC anchor asked. "Or will it be buried like so many inconvenient truths before it? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. The royal family will never be the same. The palace may be silent, but the world is listening. Diana's voice, long buried, has roared back to life, and its echoes are shaking the monarchy to its core. Camilla's tears, Charles's silence, William and Harry's uneasy reunion, it all points to one chilling reality. This letter changes everything. Was it a final warning, a mother's last attempt to protect her sons, or something even deeper? As the crown wavers and the public takes sides, one question hangs heavy in the air. Can the royal family survive Diana's final words? Stay tuned. This royal reckoning is far from over.